Hello, NextGen Nation. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to your first breakout session of the day. I hope everybody enjoyed our opening keynotes. With that, I sure did. I'm going to try to emulate Emily's energy as best I can as your moderator for our first breakout session today. My name is Leah Anderson. I'm the Director of Marketing here at GovLoop, and thank you so much for spending your time here with us today. Welcome to the first session. We're going to get into it quickly. You are in the Keys to Hybrid Communication session. So a brief description for you. You're on mute. Your video is frozen. There's a lot of background noise and we can't hear you. Even though video meetings and remote work are now normalized, there's still a lot of day-to-day challenges, or let's be honest, annoyances that can arise in a hybrid work environment. Today, our expert will share how to overcome barriers, improve collaboration in the hybrid work environment. Before we get into it and before I introduce our speaker, we have a couple housekeeping items to go over with you. So tweet with us today as you'd like, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days. Please share what you're learning with the hashtag you see on the screen here. It's a great way to connect with other attendees as well, and we will try to engage with you there too. If you have any questions today or technical difficulties, please feel free to use the Q&A chat. We will address those as quickly as we can and help you out. There is also a help desk in the virtual environment if you need help there too. My colleague Callista will help you out if anything should arise. In that same Q&A portal, you can put your questions for our speaker. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can. We also have an open chat available for you today, and we really want to hear from you. But potentially more importantly, this is where you can interact directly with other attendees on the session today. So feel free, please use that public open chat to connect with each other and also pose questions if you'd like. If you miss anything today, you need to take a water break, bathroom break, whatever it might be, don't worry. Everyone will have access to all of the session recordings today. We'll make that available to everyone tomorrow via a follow-up email. So don't stress too much about having to pop out for anything that you might need to do. Also, we want to cover some CPE information for you. There are 3 criteria that must be met for you to earn your CPE credit. So the first one is you need to stay for the entirety of this session. You need to be here and participate for the whole session. So even if you're popping out to go do whatever, please don't exit the session because that will sort of terminate, your participation live with us. Secondly, you do need to complete all of the polls. We will make it very, very clear when the polls are running. You'll see them in the slides, but again, we will let you all know this is a poll question, please answer. You have about a minute to engage with that poll, so we'll try to keep it open for you all as long as we can. And thirdly, we need everyone to complete the post-event CPE evaluation to obtain your credit. There will be a link to that in the console that you're on right now. If you have trouble finding that, please let us know. We can send you the link in the chat. You can also go to the Resource Center to find a list of all your CPE evaluations for all sessions today. So if you want to complete the evaluation at the end of the day, you can go back to that list to find it. Again, you can ask anyone in the chat, the help desk, to direct you to those links should you need them. But just a reminder, we have those three criteria that must be met for CPE credits. Those will get emailed out to everyone once we've sort of validated that the criteria have been met. That will happen via email in about a week or so. Okay, so now for the more interesting things. I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker today. Joining us is Arianne Gallagher-Welcher. Arianne is the Executive Director at the U.S. Department of Agriculture Digital Service Office of the Chief Information Officer. Thank you so much for being here, Arianne. And with that, I hand the reins over to you.
Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you to everyone here attending NextGen today. Just taking a quick look at the attendee list, it looks like there's a ton of folks from great age, local, federal government. Thank you all so much for your public service. It's greatly appreciated. Also see a couple of folks from USDA as well. So shout out to all of my amazing USDA colleagues who are here. Today, I'm really happy to spend some time with all of Jen, talking about keys to hybrid communication, overcoming barriers and improving collaboration in a hybrid work environment. We're all pretty much, especially with the pandemic, have exposure to working in hybrid environments. And I think a lot of folks, depending on the size and scale of their agency and their operations, everyone definitely has to work in hybrid environments as part of their regular course of work these days. So really understanding how to leverage and use these different tools and techniques to really help improve collaboration in a hybrid environment is super important, in which all here to hopefully gain some value, understand and learn some different ways to help do that on your team and your organization. So thank you all so much for your time and for your willingness to come and talk about this great topic today. So just quickly going over what we'll talk about in today's session. We'll talk about some common barriers and challenges. I definitely want folks to share those in the chat. So definitely make sure folks are doing that as well as we're talking about different ideas and things like that. So definitely want to make sure that we talk about those. Also, we want to do some insights, share some insights, some tips, and different ways that we can improve collaboration specifically. Communicating hybridly is something that we're all doing, but how can we use a hybrid environment to really drive and produce great collaboration environments? That's something that we really want to help focus today's session on, because when talking about hybrid work environment, there's definitely a lot of different areas that we can focus on and talk about. Then we'll definitely do some Q&A both throughout the entire session itself and at the end. And then also I have a couple of examples where folks can learn more, can gain more information, gain more insight, and gain more learning. So first, really quickly, wanted to take an opportunity just to talk about the USDA Digital Service, kind of who we are and what we do. We are a small team within the Office of the Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We really want to help partner with the rest of the USDA enterprise to enhance and accelerate impact on the many different missions that USDA performs for the public every single day. Some of our goals are to help the community, serve as a catalyst, and help set the direction for how we look at and support our IT workforce across the department. We are a small and mighty team, and we are definitely really excited to be at the department, partnering with everyone across all the different USDA mission areas on all the many ways that USDA supports the public across the country and across the globe. Some of the things about what we do, we try to break it into three sort of distinct buckets around connecting, doing and learning, and teaching. One of the big things that we like to do is we try to connect all the different types of key talent that exist across the department with other partners, both in the federal government, local government, and private sector, to really figure out how to solve a lot of the different technology and digital service delivery challenges that our agency faces across our many different mission areas. Just to give you a sense of size and scale of USDA, USDA is over 130,000 federal employees. We have over 4,500 county offices across the country. We also have a foreign service arm, and we have individuals from USDA in almost every single embassy across the globe. So it is definitely a wide dispersed workforce, and the need for us to be able to communicate well with our stakeholders and with our colleagues in a hybrid environment is super important. We also like to roll up our sleeves and work alongside our partners in figuring out how to solve some of the different tech challenges that we're facing when delivering the wide variety of different programs that USDA offers to the public. We really try to understand from a very ground user level what some of the challenges are and what are some of the different opportunities to help drive better digital service delivery. And then taking what we learn from those and teaching. We really try to help teach and spread best practices that we learn along the way. And also, we really like to take the opportunity to elevate and highlight a lot of the amazing work that goes on at the department every single day. All of our different mission areas and agencies are doing fantastic work, and a lot of times aren't getting the credit or aren't getting sort of the recognition or acknowledgement. So when we see really great practices of digital service delivery in a human-centered design way, we really like to elevate and highlight those examples and provide recognition to our amazing federal employees who are just working incredibly hard every day to help advance all of the different USDA missions. So talking about, in particular, why is communicating in a hybrid important to us? Why is it important to USDA? Why is it important to our team? Why is it important to me? One of the things when I talked about in terms of USDA, we're a really large workforce across 8 different functional mission areas. And then across those 8 mission areas, there's over 29 USDA agencies that help execute the work. So for example, there is a Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs mission area, TFAA, and one of the agencies that is under TFAA that executes a lot of the work is the Foreign Agricultural Service. So there's 29 different agencies and services across USDA that are doing a wide multitude of different types of work for different members of the public. So the people that we serve are everywhere. The people that we need to connect and communicate and work with to provide that service are everywhere. And particularly and very personally, our USDA digital service team is all over the place. As you can see some of these different spots on the map, this is where just our small team is interspersed across the globe. And very personally, that little red dot in Italy is me. I'm coming to you live from Rome, Italy, because my husband is a member of the Foreign Service, and we're both public servants. And he initially just started his tour of duty here in Rome, Italy. So for the past 3 months, I've been really trying to understand and learn how to make a hybrid work environment work really well, to communicate and collaborate really well with my team that I support that are mostly in the US. Right now, all of our small and mighty team, we're across about 5 different time zones. And so trying to figure out how we can use all of our different tools and resources at our disposal to build a really great collaborative environment is really important, and is something that I am learning kind of, on the ground each and every day, trying to figure out how can I support my team, how can I support the different stakeholders, knowing that I'm in a very different time zone and knowing that a lot of my team members are not all in the same time zone, and particularly a lot of the people that we work with and serve are also all over the place as well. So really trying to build positive collaborative environments remotely for teams is something that's really personally important to me and that I continue to learn about. And I'm happy to share some things during the different experiences across my federal career that I've seen can be helpful, and would love for others in the chat as well to share some of their experiences and things that have worked well. We're all a public service community trying to do this together, and I'm sure every single person on this webinar has different techniques and things that can be greatly shared. So now we're going to start into our first poll question. Folks, now that we're on this slide, folks should be able to start taking the poll. And basically, this is me just to kind of get a pulse of some of the different challenges that you guys are facing while collaborating in a hybrid environment. Out of these 4 that are listed here, what is the one that you're having the biggest difficulty with in terms of your work and in working in a hybrid environment? There's definitely no wrong answer here. There's, very interested in getting a landscape across the group here in terms of first poll question. So I'm going to give folks a couple moments here to go on and take the poll. And then I will also double check with Leah to see if there are any question Q&A in the chat that we can answer.
Sure thing. No questions yet. We did, just to keep in mind for you, we had a little bit of audio echo in the beginning. I think it's resolved though. So we should be good there.
Excellent.
And we had someone say, thank you for your presentation in Italian. So we've gotten, I'm proud of myself for reading that. So yeah.
But that is one of the things I'm still learning is learning how to speak Italian in a different language, while working here remotely full time from, across the globe. And how am I serving and working with a lot of my stakeholders? A lot of them are in the DC area, but also there's other folks across the country and across the globe that we work with as well. So it's definitely been a really interesting learning experience so far, and one that will definitely be a lot more answers along the way and more learning along the way for sure.
Right. So whenever you're ready, Arianne, I think we can push forward to the results. I think we've met our minute criteria.
Okay, here we'll do that. So I think now we're sharing the results here. So it looks like, so it looks like the large, biggest category where folks seem to be experiencing some challenges is around the kind of lack of connection, engagement, and presence with your team or stakeholders that are in a hybrid environment. And then sometimes that brings increased feelings of isolation or not being able to collaborate enough. That is something that is very relatable and very real in a hybrid environment, and definitely something that we're going to talk about today and offer some different tips and ideas of how to approach that. And then it seems like the next popular answer is, getting the information that you need to convey and the information that you need to receive to the right people at the right time. And I think both of those things are super important and definitely can be a challenge in a hybrid environment. So those are definitely things that we're going to talk about today and offer different suggestions. And so we'll really thank you so much for participating in that poll and sharing some of your experiences there. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of those common barriers that folks face working and collaborating in a hybrid environment. And based on my experience and the experience of a lot of people that I work with, I've seen these type of challenges kind of come together in 2 broad categories. One sort of category is that related to timing and technical barriers and challenges. And then the other one is kind of related to connection and engagement challenges. So we're going to talk about kind of both of those and some examples of where that, where that comes into play and some of those things that happen. First, let's talk a little bit about the timing and technical barriers and challenges. Timing is a big one in terms of what are the types of conversations or collaborations that we need to have, how many of our different stakeholders need to be on a platform on the same time, sharing ideas, gathering information. This is a real big communication challenge in general, especially with, usually there's only 40 hours in the work week. And I know a lot of us work past those 40 hours to try to get everything done that we need to. So really trying to figure out that timing and how you're using the different communication tools you have to really make the most of that, limited amount of time that folks have within a work week to help get things accomplished. So a couple of things here that folks mention a lot is, meetings. Being in, does a conversation first place? Or can it be initially an email? Can it be initially could it be initially a shared document where folks can contribute some ideas and thoughts? And then maybe can it then be a meeting to kind of help get to a decision point? Those are definitely a lot of things in terms of the timing challenges. Is how do you create that collaborative environment? Does it always have to be in a space where everyone is on interacting at the same time, or in the same place? There are definitely times and spaces where you want to try to create that collaborative environment of getting everyone all together in a similar time. But there's also a lot of different tools and things that folks can use to help create a collaborative space that doesn't necessarily have to have everyone at the same place at the same time. So we'll talk a little bit through some of those through today's session as well. Technical, we had some audio challenges a little bit at the beginning this morning, and then going through, there's someone's on mute, or whether or not to put your camera on, how you engage with folks. The thing that I definitely always like to express with the technical challenges is no matter what technology you have, no matter what tools that you may have at your disposal, technical challenges are always going to happen. And usually they're going to happen when you don't want them to happen, which is always frustrating. It's a challenge, especially when you're trying to convey a point or try to get buy-in for an idea and you're having a presentation. It can be really tough trying to manage those and be really frustrated when, somebody's on mute, or somebody should be on mute when they're not, and you hear, crazy background noises. That stuff is going to happen in a hybrid environment, and is going to be more and more part of our kind of regular workplace. So one of the things that we'll talk about today, and would love folks to, share in the chat as well, is how do you cope with those? Because those are going to happen. Those are going to come up. How do you manage those effectively when you're in a hybrid environment, to still help build meaningful collaborative environments, to still have great conversations and meetings? How do you get past those technical challenges to overall meet the needs of your mission? And so we'll talk about those, and definitely want to hear from others in the chat as well, in terms of some of the things that we all do to try to cope with some of those technical challenges that we may face. And then talking about the connection and engagement barriers and challenges. These are, I think this resonated a lot with folks with the first poll question, is that feeling of being connected to your team, that feeling of being connected to your colleagues and to the stakeholders and the people that you're working with, and to your supervisors and senior superiors. Not having a face-to-face, maybe in-person connection, or sometimes even a face-to-face connection because your camera's not working. That definitely can be a challenge in a hybrid environment. And how are you building and being part of a collaborative environment? The biggest challenge that I hear a lot from folks is definitely individuals' personal preferences of whether or not to have their camera on during a virtual meeting, and being able to communicate and engage with someone face to face, and how for some that's really important to help build connection, to build collaboration, and for others it's the last thing they want. And so it's how do you understand and work with people that maybe have different preferences or ways that they build connection, and how can you build connection in a variety of different ways, especially when you're working with a diverse group of people that may not all want to have their camera on at the same time, or because of the bandwidth they can't have their camera on at the same time. That's definitely usually a big challenge that folks talk about, of how do you set norms, or kind of how do you create those environments where folks feel engaged and they want to turn on their camera and they want to engage back and forth and create that environment. And then also being comfortable with a variety where, folks may not want to do that all of the time. And so how do you create that balance? That's definitely a big challenge that folks talk about, and we'll definitely chat more about today, and talk about some things that folks can do to help build connection, not necessarily in just one format or another. And engagement. This one is really big. And this one, guys, is big across, hybrid environments and non-hybrid environments. It's really understanding in a team, in an organization, working with your stakeholders and your customers, understanding and having a feeling that barrier of, are you seen? Are you heard? And are you valued as a team member, as an individual contributor at your agency? And then as you're working with others, how are you understanding individuals that you're communicating with? How do you see them? How do you hear them? How do you show that you value what they do and what they provide to the team? This engagement piece has definitely been a huge challenge for especially a federal workforce that is across 5 different generations and has different ways of engaging and building those connections. So for some folks, this is a really tough one to try to understand how can you do that in a hybrid environment, in doing it in a way that is genuine and authentic. That is definitely a challenge that a lot of folks talk about, and we'll address some different tools and different ways to approach that for sure. Okay, so now we're going to go into the next poll. So this question is talking about, basic communication challenges that folks deal with in a hybrid environment on a hybrid team. So going in, it's talking about, what communication challenge do you think, in your opinion, is the most common when folks are working in a hybrid team? So folks can definitely go ahead and participate in that poll. And then I'll double check with Leah. Do we have any questions in the Q&A?
We do. I'm just laughing a little bit at the poll because of the too much communication option. I don't know if I've experienced that, but I can imagine that is kind of overwhelming potentially. So I'd love to hear from people in the chat if you've been on that side of things with too much communication, because that's a really interesting thing to think about. I do have one question here for you. I have a feeling we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but let's address it now too. Maria had a question saying she would be interested in hearing more about the methods you might use to maintain engagement for geographically dispersed teams. That's kind of what we're talking about at large, like hybrid, but maybe taking into account different time zones and things like that. So just if we can touch on quickly again, I assume we'll talk about it. Just the geographic element of dispersed teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something, especially in the last about 3-4 years of my career, especially working at USDA, I've had a lot of exposure in, because of the size and scale of USDA, the people that we work with and the people that we need to serve are all over the place, across different time zones. Some folks don't even want to be anywhere near a computer, where some folks are going to be on the computer all the time. So this is definitely something that comes up a lot at USDA in terms of how do you help maintain that connection and engagement, especially with a team that may be all over the country or all over the world. One of the things that I have found that has been really helpful is how we use our different communication tools to kind of create that sense of connection that's ongoing, that no matter where you are, no matter what time zone, you can go on to your Teams channel or chat and put in a meme or just a recognition or a kudos to, thank you for this person for doing what you're doing. We know that there may be a colleague out with our Forest Service going and working on a really big forest fire, and they're out in the field, or somebody's part of our Forest Service working in that parks, or one of our health inspectors going out to different plants and doing that work, creating a space where folks can go to at any time and kind of have a sense of connection and have that opportunity to share kudos and to give kudos and to receive kudos from others is a really great way to help build that connection across dispersed teams. The other thing too, especially related to information sharing, creating those places where folks can get updated in real time and share information in real time about what's going on, what challenges people are facing, using different communication tools to do that versus trying to wait to share everything in a staff meeting is also another really great tool across geographically dispersed teams to make sure you're building that sense of togetherness, you're building that sense of information transparency, and you're providing information in ways that people can access it across multiple time zones.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, that idea of self-service information is just so important, especially around accessibility too. And yeah, it looks like we
absolutely 100%.
Right. And it looks like we have
it looks like you. Yeah, we got the results for the poll. Thank you so much, Leah. So yeah, it looks like a close between miscommunication and not enough communication, that folks are thinking, this is the most common challenges that are coming up, working in a hybrid team. And I will definitely tell you that for folks that I've worked with in teams and folks understanding, a lot of times these are all really big challenges, and that they come up and address a lot. I think what we do see a lot is that miscommunication, is that, depending on the type of message you're trying to send and receive and what you're trying to convey, that a lot of times what you're intending to try to communicate in an email or in a meeting doesn't come across in one way, and then trying to figure out how to, bridge that gap in miscommunication, or thinking that like, hey, maybe an email that provides this level of information is enough, going to have every tend in one email, and a lot of that may not be enough, or there may not be enough information for folks to engage. So yeah, this is definitely really great information, and definitely around too much communication. I have definitely seen that, especially with a lot of teams, especially on tech teams and folks that are not used to working on tech teams. There's definitely a lot of, especially with agile methodology, where folks can do, and a lot of times often do, like daily scrum meetings. And usually they're every morning. They're a certain time zone. They're very brief. They kind of talk about, here's the major touch points for today. And for a lot of folks, that is a very different way of communicating than what they may have done in the past. And for others, that's all they know. So definitely kind of understanding, those different ways, and understanding people and where there be, too much communication or too much information that you're trying to convey to somebody at one time. It can definitely be a heightened challenge in a hybrid environment, especially in a 24/7 cycle, where a lot of times we feel like we need to be online and interacting all of the time. So definitely some really great insights here from folks. So now I'm just going to talk about a little bit, just a couple of insights and tips on, some of the challenges that we talked about, some of the challenges that you guys mentioned that you faced. What are some of the different ways that you can help approach improving collaboration in hybrid environments when you're using different communication tools? And so these are just a couple of different examples. Some of them I'll go into and provide, sort of a personal story or an example, and then others, definitely want to, share and have others, share from that experience as well. The first thing that I usually try to tell everyone, no matter what type of communication challenge that they're having, whether it's in a hybrid environment or not, is figuring out how to meet people where they are. And that can be done in a variety of ways, especially in a hybrid environment. And what I mean by that is understanding the people that you're communicating with. What are some of the drivers or things that are important to them? What are some of the ways that resonate to them in terms of how they want to receive, or how they best receive information, or things like feedback? It's really trying to understand who your audience is and who your stakeholders are, whether that's your individual team members, whether that's the stakeholders that you're communicating with to try to accomplish a task. It's trying to understand from that other person's point of view who they are, how they best receive information, and how best that they can engage in a group. And let me give you a really good example. I was initially on one team a couple years ago, where the team I initially left, everyone was very engaged, took that methodology and applied it initially to a new team that I was helping work and support. And that team was very different from the one that I came with. And so to them, that was definitely an example of like, do we need to meet every day for 30 minutes to talk about what's going on? Like, is this too much communication? Is this too much, are we spending too much time trying to talk with one another versus trying to complete certain tasks or do things individually and then come back and be part of a group? So I definitely have had missteps in my career, and I'm sure others as well, understanding who your audience is, who the people you're working with are and how best they receive information. I've also worked in very diverse teams where there are a lot of folks who like to engage and brainstorm in real time, face to face, or through virtual chat. And then there are definitely others who they want to look at some information, look at a prompt, look at some data, go back and be able to take that back and digest it and think about it, and then maybe be a large group individually through writing or through providing anonymous comments. Understand and meet people where they are to get that level of engagement that you're looking for is really important. And I think the more folks do this ahead of time, depending on the outcomes you're trying to achieve in making a collaborative hybrid environment, the better off your outcomes are going to be. So the more you put into this at the front end, the more you're going to get out of it, the more engagement you're going to get. It may be through a couple of different channels, but overall the level of engagement and also the level of trust and respect that you get from others, knowing that you're trying to communicate in multiple methods to kind of meet people where they are, it really does a lot to kind of build trust, to build a really engaging, connected, collaborative hybrid work environment. This next one is really important to me, especially right now. Trust and empower your teammates and stakeholders to contribute through multiple channels and to contribute. One of the things that I am learning is a very different work schedule for me is that a lot of the folks I work with are in Eastern Standard Time and I'm in Rome, which is 6 hours ahead. So the time that I have to directly engage face to face or virtually through a lot of my stakeholders, through a lot of the partners and my superiors that I work with, that pretty much during my workday now is cut in half. And that is very different from when I was back at the States. And a lot of times I was definitely in a role in my position where I was in back-to-back meetings all day long, connecting, communicating, talking with people to figure out challenges. Because of the environment I am now, that's very different. And I've had to pivot and shift to figure out, how do I make the most out of that time that I do have to connect and engage with people directly? And then how can I best use the time where I don't have that to use email, to use shared documents, to use other different methods and communication tools and environments to get engagement, to get feedback, and to not have to necessarily need to get it in real time. So that's something that I'm continuing to learn and try different things. But a lot of it goes to really trust and empowering the people that you work with, that the times when you're not together, you're giving them the tools, you're giving them the space to really help engage and connect, and that you're doing that through multiple channels so that not everybody has to speak out loud in a meeting, because some people are really uncomfortable with that, or others can help draft documents in real time through shared documents. There's a lot of ways that people to do that, but a lot of that, the base of making that work really well is showing and communicating and engaging with your teammates and stakeholders, that you're trusting them, that they're going to use tools and they're going to use the methods that work best for them to help bring their best self to a challenge, to a problem, and help provide that contribution. And knowing that that may be in a different format than what you may prefer or that you may lead with, for example. Next is building time and accountability in your teams and who you're working with to take ideas and run with them. There's not going to be a lot of time where the whole entire team is doing something together at the same time, and being able to run a session or get information. How can you help build that time through your schedule? How can you help build that accountability space so that folks can go off and independently be able to contribute and do things, so that when you do need to bring people together, you're using the best of that time, and you're not using that time just to double check on different tasks, or just to double check if certain things are done. Like, really, how do you make the most of that time together to get the most out of that group discussion, that group conversation, especially going to prioritizing meetings and prioritizing discussions where there needs to be to get the outcome you're trying to achieve through having and engaging in a group dialogue, if there's a decision that needs to be made, or if there's an opportunity to bring everybody together and to connect, share an acknowledgement or congratulate a colleague for something that they achieved. Prioritize those meeting times and those conversations where, the discussion piece of it is really important versus not having meetings just to have meetings or the check boxes or to share information that could be shared in other meetings. That's really important in a hybrid environment because it's showing that you're trying to take respect and value of people's time and make the most of that time together. And there's a lot of different ways to do that using different types of hybrid tools. And then last and not least is definitely investing in the time to learn how to use the tools that are available to you. Depending on the organization that you have, there may be different platforms that you use. There may be different chat features. There may be different shared document types of repositories. Each organization has a set of different tools. And a lot of times there's not a lot of time upfront spent kind of discovering what they are, learning what they are, figuring how to use that. What I tell folks is to definitely build and advocate for that time with your supervisors and your teams, to take that time, to take those trainings, to understand here are the different communication tools and here's all the different ways I can use them. And if there are tools that aren't out there or that you don't have available that others in your sphere use that could be helpful, work with your management, work with your supervisor to advocate to see if similar tools could be made available. Really leveraging all the different digital tools in your toolbox, especially now in the federal government. There's definitely more and more tools being made available to federal agencies every day that can really have a successful hybrid work environment, and taking the time doing some of the trainings and webinars to understand how to best use them, even if you maybe used them for a long time, but maybe it's getting a refresher on it. That is super important in a hybrid environment to make sure that you can maximize and leverage all the different tools that you have available to create a really good, positive hybrid team, hybrid collaboration environment. So now we're going to go to the third poll question here. And this is talking about different types of collaboration tools that you guys may have used in a hybrid environment, and just getting an understanding from your perspective, which these types of tools have been really useful to you. Like, which ones have you found to be really valuable and really helpful in terms of, working in a hybrid environment? And so while folks are responding to that poll, I'll double check with Leah here to see, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, we do have a couple comments and questions. I do want to mention one thing. We are seeing your video freeze here and there. So I just wanted to suggest maybe for the next couple of minutes, do you want to try turning your video off to see if we can save a little bandwidth? And then we can turn it back on in a couple minutes. Let's give that a shot and see how it goes. But Arianne, you're still with us, correct?
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes. We miss you, but we can still hear you. There's
no worries.
Someone just put in a comment, which I think this is a great point. They're saying that, you mentioned on the technology, on the training technology, that we often assume people know how to use a system when maybe we shouldn't make that assumption, that we can't assume everybody has the same level of technical savviness with all of these different tools that are available. So just curious your thoughts on that, kind of creating an equal playing field when it comes to actually using all these tools that are available to everyone, and how do we make everyone feel comfortable?
That's a really great question, and you're exactly right. I think everyone sometimes comes into a situation thinking that everyone knows how to use Teams in the same way or knows how to use a platform in the same way. And a lot of times that may be different. Like, there may be different ways that folks get training or information on how to use tools, or maybe some folks have used these tools for a long time and others haven't. What I have found that USDA has done really helpful in terms of our client experience center is they try to make a lot of different tools and training available on all the different communication platforms that are available for USDA employees to use. And then they really try to emphasize working with managers and supervisors to build that time into an employee's workday, where they're encouraging and advocating for them to use their work time to use those tools, to understand, take those trainings, take those refreshers, and really try to build that into the culture, and then make sure that those resources are available in real time, that they're not webinars that you have to be on at a certain time in order to take, that there's on-demand videos and different, go your own pace type of courses. I think that is something that USDA has done really well, because I think one of the challenges that we have is that there are so many different communication tools available, and it seems like we're getting new ones every day, or new options to leverage and use every day. So it really trying to build in that time, and also that expectation to really help understand and use those tools. And I think it's on teams and managers and individuals themselves to also advocate for that, to say, hey, maybe, if anyone in our team is interested in doing a webinar with our IT folks on understanding how to use this new chat feature, or things like that, that's definitely something I advocate for folks to do, because that's also a way that folks can help build connection in hybrid teams, is learning together in a space how to use some of these different tools.
Yeah, I like too what you were mentioning about having all the trainings available, because that's going back to what we talked about earlier with self-service information. In the case that someone doesn't feel comfortable maybe offering up the fact that they don't know much about a platform, I think that's a nice way to offer it. You can just go to those resources as you need them. But yes, okay, now it looks like our results are ready. So Arianne, back over to you.
Great. So let's take a look at these poll results and see where folks are. So it looks like the majority of folks are saying that like chat and messaging tools have been, the most useful in hybrid environments, which is absolutely great. Those are ones that folks mention a lot, that are really helpful. And there's a lot of ways to use different chat and messaging tools to build those connections, especially when there's people across different time zones. There's a lot of really great tools to do that. So it makes a lot of sense here. And it seems like shared documents are also another one that folks are saying that are really helpful. I can't advocate enough for shared document editing and giving folks the digital space to be able to collaborate kind of on their own time, versus saying, hey, we're all going to be on at the same time and go through this document line by line. I think a lot of times there's ways that you can really use that type of technology to let people contribute in their own way, but also on their own time, versus trying to get everyone to engage and deliver a equal or different amount of contribution at the same time can be really hard for some folks. So I really advocate for different shared documents. Other ones that I'm going to share that I've heard in the space and that I've experienced working really well in hybrid teams, especially when you're trying to do different collaborations or meetings where you're trying to get feedback, idea generation. There's definitely a lot of really great virtual ideation tools that I've seen a lot of folks use in virtual environments to get people to engage on multiple levels. So for example, there are a lot of great ideation tools like mural boards, where folks can go online and there's virtual stickies. Like if you were in a conference room and you were ideating and brainstorming and writing things on stickies, you can do that in a virtual environment, and then, have folks work and kind of do affinity clustering and group from there. There's a lot of really great digital tools and free digital tools out there to try to create those collaboration spaces, similar to as you would try to do if you have everybody together in the same location. So those I think are definitely really helpful. Others is definitely for folks that have Microsoft Teams or other platforms, different groups and different channels that you can create with your teams, or just different affinity groups or just collaboration groups that you can create, and just add a bunch of things to that digital space to help create connections and share information. We try to work with our small team that's kind of all over the country and across the globe. We have our own sort of Teams channel, and we try to use that to have project trackers to understand where everyone's at in real time in terms of things that we're working on. We use that to provide information on a daily basis to say, hey, if there's an update on a certain project, but maybe it's, 3 o'clock in the morning in DC time, but it's like 9 o'clock in the morning here. How can I use that channel to help share information as I'm getting it, or help receive information when I log on the next day after folks have been working, in the evening? Really great ways to, use different tools and chat for that, and also just create spaces to connect. One way that I've seen that at USDA and other organizations is through things that folks call kudos boards. And those can simply just be a channel that's open and available to everyone, an online group that's available to everyone, and just go on and just share recognition, say happy birthday to a colleague, or just acknowledge the accomplishment that someone's made. I've seen those work really well in hybrid environments, just to have that opportunity to connect in a virtual space and kind of build that engagement. The other thing is also voting and polling tools, especially when you're working with a large group of people in a virtual environment. If you're trying to get information or insight on kind of where the room is at on a particular topic, voting and polling tools are really great. Also in terms of scheduling, doodle polls and different polls there to try to help find a time where you can get a majority of the group together to work in a collaborative virtual environment is also really helpful. And then lastly, the other thing I'll share is that there's definitely a lot of different calendar and time management tools that people use to help block out time for individual work versus blocking out those times to be involved in key conversations and meetings, and how you use those different time management tools. With any technology, the one thing, especially putting on my OCIO hat, that I want to share is that always double check with your IT office to make sure that there's a federal government terms of use that's acceptable, and also if there is places where you can leverage or use free tools, or where you can download other available tools as well. So now what I wanted to do is make sure that we had some time reserved for some particular Q&A. If there's ones that we haven't gotten to in the chat or Q&A, happy to address some of those additional questions before we close out for the rest of the session. So I'm gonna reach out to Leah and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I do have a question queued up for you to touch on part of this topic that we haven't talked too much about, but I'm curious because I think it's a big part of the conversation for folks. When we're working in a hybrid environment, the lines get a little blurred for when we're working, when we're not working, especially if we're working from home, we're working online into the evening. We don't really have that process anymore of shutting down the computer and walking out the door. So what do you think are things to keep in mind around kind of maintaining that boundary of work life in a hybrid environment specifically?
It's a really great question, and it's one that I get a lot in terms of teams, and especially in a hybrid environment, because there always seems like that constant pressure to be attached to your email and to be online and to respond as quickly as possible, and it's a real challenge that a lot of folks feel in this kind of digital hybrid environment. One of the things that I definitely really recommend is working with your team and your colleagues and on a particular group that you're working on, and setting some team norms and coming together as your individual group to help set some team norms and expectations in terms of how you want to support one another in achieving that work-life balance, and then holding each other accountable for it. This is something that my team does with me all the time, because they'll see what time that I'm logging on and trying to respond to emails, and they'll hold me accountable for like, hey, you're not setting the boundaries that we've set as a team, or hey, you should be offline and not connected. This meeting that we're doing at is like 8 o'clock your time, and you know, you don't have to be there. And so we try to hold each other accountable as a team and build that trust to kind of help set those healthy boundaries and know for each team member, you know, hey, what are their consistent working hours that they work? What type of schedule do they have? How do we make sure that we're using things like shared calendars and shared communication tools to help know when people are and are not available? And then when life happens and when stuff happens, how do we help set up those mechanisms to be able to support one another or cover for one another when somebody may need to be away on a time that they're normally online? I think a lot of that is built through just communication and really working with your team to understand and flesh out for your team, for the folks that you're working with really closely, what are the norms that your group has, and then helping folks, you know, stick to them and hold folks accountable and support one another in doing that. And that definitely takes time and concerted effort from the team to kind of come together and agree on like those sets of group norms.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I like your point too about having it documented, because it's one thing if you're part of a team for a while and you can kind of pick up on the norms. But for anyone that's new coming into the organization or the team, it's such a relief to be able to reference something of like, okay, these are standard practices around communication. So I think that's definitely super, super helpful. We have a comment here from Mary, which I just wanted to address because I love it so much. She's saying, my group often incorporates time during recurring meetings to share kudos and kiddings, to acknowledge individual good work, share fun memes, riddles, mild jokes, etc. I love that. It brings levity back into the workday that, you know, sometimes does drop off in a hybrid environment. We don't have those, you know, water cooler chats anymore. So I like the kudos, the recognition, appreciation, gratitude is so, so important. We know that impacts employee engagement hugely. But the kiddings part, I love that. I love putting some emphasis on that. It's really important.
It is something that is critical in terms of maintaining and keeping those connections. And so there's definitely a lot of ways that you can do that in a hybrid environment. Some folks do it, create a Teams channel where folks will share, you know, here's this funny thing that happened to me today, or here's this experience we all deal with, particularly right now in the fall, and for folks that have kids. Care and having to juggle and balance that is definitely a common shared experience. And so sharing those things, you know, together as a team and creating a safe space. The other way that I've seen that folks do it really well is create kind of a recurring pattern. Like you've said, you know, in terms of folks, when they get together for a weekly staff meeting, they set aside the first 5 minutes to just share, you know, what's going on in people's day, or, you know, how folks are doing during a particular tough time. You know, especially when we had, you know, there's so many different folks in the South dealing with the latest hurricanes, and we knew where some of our different team members were in those areas, you know, always checking to make sure, is there anything that we can do to help support those folks, or are they doing okay? You know, building that as a routine into the times where you're connecting and meeting and working together. And setting that as a pattern and as an expectation, but also trying to do it in a way, you know, understand where your team is, meet them where they are, and understand how best they do that. Some teams, chat is the way that they feel most comfortable do that, and they get that. Other ones, it's, you know, when they're around the virtual water cooler. So there's definitely a lot of great ways to do that, to help try to rebuild some of that connection and engagement that folks in a hybrid environment has sometimes felt like they've lost.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on to the next slide here, because I do think you had a couple of resources you wanted to share or address before I wrap up our session.
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you guys all so much. I've been reading the different attendee chat and a lot of really great thoughts and ideas. So I hope folks are checking those out in terms of allowing some really great ideas, because I think we're all trying to work in this space and all trying to understand how best to create a hybrid environment. So thank you all so much for engaging and sharing some of your ideas. This is a little caveat here, as you know, as a USDA employee, none of these are official endorsements of any of this content or product that's maybe mentioned here, but these are just examples of places where I think folks can find really valuable information on this topic, and then on other topics that we've touched base on and communicated in terms of, looking at this webinar, looking at this topic in particular. One that's very recent that I really think that talks a lot about these issues and some different ways to address them is a great Fed manager webinar that they did back in September around cubicles versus culture, winning strategies for a results-driven hybrid workforce. I think if you look at that kind of results-driven workplace and how you're doing that in a hybrid environment, really great conversation in that webinar. Definitely include folks to go online and check out that recording, learn more about it. There is also the Office of Personnel Management has a really helpful webpage on a hybrid work environment toolkit, has a lot of different training materials and resources of like, how do you build a good hybrid environment with a multi-generational workforce, and what are some things folks can do. And then definitely 2 books that I recommend that talk a lot about, how do you build those environments, and how can you build those, in places where folks are remote and you're working in a hybrid space. Hack Your Bureaucracy is just one of my favorite books in general in terms of just how to get things done in a very bureaucratic kind of, public service government environment where there's a lot of layers, and depending, no matter what role you are, where you can help drive to get things done. It's a really great book I recommend. And then Radical Candor. This is important. I think it's valuable for both bosses in terms of if you are a supervisor or want to become a supervisor, or if you're a team member. And then just based on my experience and a lot of colleagues that I've worked with in this space, there's several books by both Brene Brown and Adam Grant, especially when you're trying to understand where to meet people where they are and how to understand people in different perspectives. Both of those authors have a ton of great books and articles on ways to do that. So if you're interested in learning more or engaging more on how to do some of those things we talked about today, this is where you can go and learn more. So, but I think we're getting close to our wrap-up time, so I'm going to hand it back over to Leah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Arianne, for all of your expertise and spending your time with us all the way from across the ocean there in Rome. Really, really appreciate it. I have lots to think over, and this has been very helpful. Before we officially wrap up, I just want to say thank you to our Alliance partners for helping put on the NextGen Virtual Summit today. I encourage you all to go to the exhibit hall, engage with these different booths and companies and resources. They have tons of information that is free and downloadable for everyone. I did see a quick question about those resources you mentioned. The slide deck will be available to download either in the console you're in right now or in the resource center. So I encourage you to do that as well. Let's see what we've got coming up next in a few minutes is the lunch keynote starting at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. You will find that session by going back to the conference hall and just clicking on launch next to the lunch keynotes. I'm really excited for the keynotes too, because we're going to be introducing all of the NextGen Public Service Award winners this year, which is truly super meaningful and very important. So I'm excited about that. Finally, just a couple of things to remember. The CPE credits, please make sure you're completing those CPE evaluations. If you need help finding that link, ask someone in the help desk in the Q&A here. We will point you in the right direction. And just make sure you're using the full breadth of what's available to you today with that leaderboard. We want you to get points so that you can get a copy of the book we're handing out, and also the networking lounge. Please connect with other public servants who are here learning just as you are. And finally, folks, thank you so much for being here. We have a full day ahead, so re-up the coffee, but we are so grateful you're here with us. And again, I'm very grateful to you, Arianne, for spending your time with us today. Thanks again so much.
Thanks so much, everybody, for everything you do. Have a great rest of your session.
Okay, talk soon. Bye-bye.